where we have a subnet 1 will be treated as a front-end subnet and subnet 2 will be treated as a back-end subnet. Subnet 1 will be range 10.10.0.0 and the first virtual machine in subnet 1 will get an IP of 10.10.0.4. As we discussed in the earlier session, first three IP addresses are reserved in Azure. The first valid IP given to a virtual machine will be IP number 4. So in subnet number 1, the IP will be 10.10.0.4, which is for virtual machine number 1. Second, in virtual machine number 2, which is in subnet 2, the valid IP will be 10.10.1.4. Based on scenario, I will explain NSG and I'll do a couple of scenario demo on network security group. Let's create this scenario first. As you know, the VNet is already ready with the subnet 1 and subnet 2. I'm going to create two virtual machines. One is Windows Server 2012 R2. Data center virtual machine with VM number 1, which is in subnet 1. Existing resource group. One CPU, 3.5 GB standard virtual machine. So in this case, one important point related to NSG, when I spin up a virtual machine, there's a default NSG is always linked, which is with the name of the VM. So my VM name is VM1 subnet 1 NSG. So in this NSG, if you see, the by default RDP rule is allow. So during the configuration of a VM, I'm not going to select any default NSG group. So one thing you remember, if in case you are selecting this, so by default RDP is allow in the VM level NSG. So I'll make it none right now, just with the default setting. And just one thing more I would like to show you. So this will be a front-end virtual machine VM number 1. Same way I'm going to spin up another virtual machine, which is subnet number 2. VM number 2, which is subnet number 2. So in this, everything will be the default setting. Only the subnet will be my backend subnet, which is subnet number 2, 10.10.1.0. So that IP will be 10.10.1.4 received by VM2. And again, no firewall at VM level right now. And create a virtual machine. So this is called the two VMs. One is in subnet 1, one is in subnet 2. I'm going to create 4 firewalls, which I'm going to use in this scenario. Network security group. One is NSG number 1, which I will link with the subnet 1. Second is network security group, which is NSG number 2, which will be for subnet number 2. Third is NSG number 3, network security group, NSG number 3, which I will link with the subnet 1 VM level. Next is I'm going to create NSG number 4, which is for subnet 2 VM level, which I linked with the subnet 2 VM level. I'll explain that scenario in a couple of minutes. So network security group, which is subnet 2 VM level, which is NSG number 4. So if I go to my resource group, so I have 4 NSGs. NSG1 I link with the subnet 1, NSG2 I link to the subnet 2, NSG3 I link with the subnet 1 only to a VM. Whatever the number of VMs we have in subnet 1, I linked with this NSG at a VM level NSG, and NSG4, which is subnet 2 VM level. So overall the scenario is NSG can attach only at 2 resources, one at the subnet level and one is at a VM level. So that's why subnet 1, NSG1 link with the subnet 1, NSG2 link with the subnet 2, NSG3 link with the subnet 1 all VMs level, and NSG4 link with VM level, which is in subnet 2. So by default, one NSG can link with multiple objects, but at the same time, and only one resource can have only one NSG. So more than one NSG at a one resource, it's not possible. And only at two resources we can attach NSG, only at subnet level, only at VM level. Based on the scenario, we'll talk about the scenario. Let me attach couple of NSGs at subnet level. So I'll go to the VNet, I'll go to subnets. So front-end subnet security group is dash, which is not attached. So I'll go to the front-end subnet 1, click on NSG, and link NSG1 subnet 1 and save. Second, I'll go to VNet, go to subnets, which is subnet number 2, and in subnet number 2, I'll link NSG2, which is subnet 2. So once both subnets are linked with the individual NSGs, so subnet level I already attached. Let's wait for the VM creation and then I'll attach NSG3 and NSG4 as well. NSG3 will be on subnet 1 VM's level and NSG4 subnet 2 VM level. So both the VMs are configured. So I'll go to the VM subnet 1, VM1 subnet 1. So how to attach NSG at a VM level? So go to the VM. Inside this, click on networking. Each VM have a dedicated NIC. So go to the NIC, and inside the NIC there is a NSG, and then you can edit and attach the NSG. So this is VM1, which is subnet 1. So I'm going to attach NSG number 3, which is subnet 1 VM level. Next is I'll go to the resource group, VM2, subnet 2 VM. Again, go to the networking, go to the NIC, and then NSG, edit, and finally link NSG4 subnet 2 VM level. So if you see my diagram, energy number 4 is linked with a subnet 2 VM level. That scenario is already configured now. Let's try to understand what are the default built-in rules configured, and based on that we try to understand the scenario. So if I go to energy 1, which is subnet level, any energy, we have 6 rules. One is inbound and one is outbound. In inbound means traffic is coming from outside to inside. So first rule is allow VNet inbound. So it means any communication between subnet 1 and subnet 2, VNet level inbound communication always allow. If you have any load balancer is also allow. Rest everything is deny. So it means at this moment RDP is also blocked. In outbound, in all firewalls, allow VNet outbound allow. VNet to VNet, what is called subnet 1 and subnet 2, internal VNet level communication allow. Internet is always allow as outbound, rest everything is blocked. So it means if I go to VNet VM1 subnet 1 public IP. So let me note down in this notepad VM1, which is in subnet 1. Second is VM2, which is in subnet 2. VM2 subnet 2 and public IP. So this is my front end, my web server as a scenario example, and this is my backend server subnet 2, which is my database scenario, database servers. So in this scenario, customer, let's take a couple of scenarios here. Here customers wants RDP is allowed over internet. This is the demand for a customer. And second, internet is allowed on subnet 1 VMs. And on the backend VM, RDP should be blocked via public IP over internet. And second is RDP should be allowed only from subnet 1 via local IP or private IP. And third, internet blocked, because this is a database server. So for security reason, we need to block internet. So let's see first on a VM1 subnet 1 RDP is allowed over internet. So by default, if you see RDP is not allowed, if I'm going to log in with a subnet 1 virtual machines, RDP is not allowed, because we've seen that default built-in groups NSG1 subnet 1 inbound RDP is not allowed. So I'm going to configure two firewall rules. One is RDP allow at so if you see the message comes blocked. So RDP allow on a subnet 1 NSG1, and second NSG number 3 VM level. Both the level I want to allow RDP so that traffic will reach to the VM level. So first is NSG1 inbound, add basic rule, click basic and select RDP allow. Straightforward rule, RDP allow, RDP at NSG1 subnet 1. So firewall rules works with the lower the priority, lower the number and higher the priority. So here everything is blocked, but I have a rule which is RDP rule, which is rule number 100. So RDP should be allowed, which have highest priority as compared to the other numbers. Same way, I'll go to the NSG number 3, which is VM level. Here also inbound RDP is not allowed. So I'm going to add inbound, again basic rule, RDP allow. So with this rule, RDP should be allowed on all the VMs based on subnet 1, which we can test in couple of minutes. That's called the step 1. Scenario number 2, in VM 1, subnet 1, internet should be allowed. That's the customer demand. And you already notice in every NSG outbound rule, internet is always allowed. So I'm not going to touch anything with the internet, which is always be allowed. So let me check the first level of testing now. I'm going to log in. So now it's working now for me. Subnet 1 VM1 is is working. And we'll see the internet, which traditionally technically default internet always be working in Azure VM. So internet is working, which is in subnet 1 VM1. I'll minimize this virtual machine. In subnet 2, RDP should be blocked via public IP, which is traditionally I have not done any rule RDP allow on subnet 2. So traditionally it's by default blocked. Second rule as per the customer is RDP should be allowed only from subnet 1. For admins, admin can take RDP to the subnet 1, and from subnet 1 they can take RDP to the subnet 2 virtual machine via local IP. So it means I have to create an inbound rule for RDP from NSG number 2 and NSG number 4. And the inbound rules say source address should be subnet 1, target will be a subnet 2, and RDP allow. So if I'll go to the NSG number 2, which is subnet 2, inbound rule, add. I'm not going to touch basic rule, source. So anyone from subnet 1, 10.10.0.0, subnet 1, all the range destination will be subnet 2, 10.10.1.0, 3389 should be allowed. So rule name will be allow RDP from subnet 1. This will be the rule. So this rule is allowed at subnet 2. So if you see the scenario, subnet 2 is allowed, but still somebody is blocking at firewall number 4. So I'll go to the same rule which is in firewall number 4, subnet 2 VM level inbound 10.10.0.0, same rule, destination 10.10.1.0, subnet 2 3389 allow. So with this, we are in a position to take RDP. We'll test in a couple of minutes. Finally, internet block should be on a subnet 2 VMs. So I have two choices. I can block internet at subnet level. I can block at VM level. So if I don't have any other virtual machines in the subnet 2, and if I want to block only a couple of virtual machines, best way I can do it at subnet level. So if and in case you have a couple of more virtual machine which is not a database servers and you don't want to block for all of them, you should not do it at subnet level. Then you can do it only at VM level. So right now I'm doing at a subnet level, which is firewall number 2. So if I go to my firewall number 2, subnet 2, internet block. So traffic from virtual machine goes to internet, which is outbound traffic. And by default, we always have internet outbound allow, which is rule number 65001. I'm going to create a rule, which is block internet. So in this source any, destination any, I have two choices to block internet. Under the destination, there is a way called service tags, where Microsoft is already given a tagging for the internet and which I can say block. This is one choice. Second, instead of not going service tag, I can just block 33443, which is SSL and port 80, because mostly you can browse either HTTP or HTTPS. This is one of the choice which I can do and block internet. So when somebody try to browse in subnet to internet, the rule number 100 will have more priority and it's block the internet on via rule number 100. And once it process, it will not talk to the rule number 65001. This is a firewall rule. As soon as the rule met with the configuration, the rule processing stop itself at rule number 100. It will not process the rule number 65001. So if I go to my subnet 1, I'll go to hostname commands. So VM1 subnet 1. From there, I'll do the RDP to 10.10.1.4, which I'm able to do that because sub VM2 subnet 2. And now I am inside to the VM2, which is subnet 2. And finally, I'll show you the internet should be blocked at subnet 2 VM level. Before going to this, let me show you the host name to avoid any confusion. VM2 subnet 2 and finally internet. So Google blocked, Yahoo blocked, all the websites are blocked. So let's do the small recap. So the summary is by default, NSG is used to allow block network traffic to and from. So by default, NSG always link at subnet or at a VM. These are the two objects resources where you can implement NSG. So in my scenario, I link four NSGs, one at a subnet 1, one at a subnet 2, another NSG at VM level at subnet 1, another NSG at VM level subnet 2. And I treat this scenario as a front-end back-end subnet where front-end is my web server and back-end is my database server. And based on the front-end and back-end, I have explained a couple of scenarios where customer demands RDP should be allowed and by default RDP is blocked, and I show you how to allow RDP. And finally in subnet 2 I blocked internet and I allow only RDP from subnet 1 to subnet 2 via local IP. So a couple of scenarios I explain. Thank you very much for joining this session, which is session number 2, demo number 2, network security group.